We're off script now, but who cares?
Yeah. I think that in order to get there, we have to be really intentional as leaders to create space for people to connect. So a couple ways we've done this at PLC that has seemed to work is we created a Sunday night service, and we said it'll be intentionally casual and intentionally relational. And so part of the service is we have 7 minutes of mingling time, of just getting to know other people who are in the same room. And then afterwards, we go out and we have dinner together every week. And some of the fruit of that has been, we have this one young man, and he doesn't have any spiritual influence in his life from his biological family. They're really against church. But then we also have this guy named Josh who plays keyboard, and they both come to dinner every single week, and they've created a friendship and a bond. And so he'll go over to their house just spontaneously. And so did we do anything as leaders? Not really, but we created space for people to connect and rub shoulders with each other. I've seen this work really well with service projects by just people hanging out with each other, doing a mission trip or some type of serving in the community. Usually food's involved. That always helps. Yeah,
good. We have a couple of just some guiding questions on this topic of relevancy for you. Again, we don't have time to have you dive into it or turn to a person next to you, but just we give these to you to think through in terms of application for this. How do your current organizational structures support a disciple-making movement in your context? And I did read these in there. I think that question is listed twice, so apparently we thought it was important enough that we must have copied and pasted that on accident for you. But if it's not, what are some of the things that you can do or might need to do in order to do that? I love a statement that a mentor of mine shares with me, and he says, Sean, sometimes you need to go slower in order to go faster. And I've really felt that the last number of years for me, we've had to really go slow in terms of the change that I would like to see in creating more of a holistic disciple-making culture, because I've had to get the systems and the organization right. So that way, hopefully in a few months, we've got an annual meeting coming up in August. Hopefully by that time, it'll be done, and most of my time will then be released into thinking through and revisioning and repurposing what we're doing in this whole area. So there's a couple questions for you on there. We need to move on. What we would like to share with you next in the B statement, we said be real, be relevant. Now we want to say this, be reachable. Be reachable. This is another no duh. But have you figured out that as leaders, we can advance the next slide, please, April. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Be reachable. I'm learning this, and I just confessed this to a friend of mine recently. I said, the older I'm getting, and the more and the longer I've been in the position of the senior pastor, and I think this would be true because he's a solo pastor, and he said the same thing is true of him as a solo pastor call. The older I get, the more introverted I'm becoming. The more I desire to be alone. The more that I dislike people. I hate to admit that. I mean, I was used to be 20 years ago, and I was 20 years ago, I was Danny's age? Yes.
For me.
Yeah. So what I just remember, I was an off-the-charts extrovert. The most recent Myers-Briggs that I've done revealed that I'm an ESPN. My favorite Myers-Briggs joke. Okay, I had a new audience. I had to use it. My spike in the you know that you're going to use that this week. Don't be lying to me. My spike on the extrovert scale has really gone down. It's my least intense spike. I've become more introverted, partly because I'm realizing that every single relationship that I have needs something from me. Every single one. I went over this with my wife the other day because it was a recent discovery on a retreat I went on with some brothers and sisters in our ARC network this last week. And it was just a big piece of discovery for me, and I had to share it with her. And she said, she didn't even finish, I wasn't even finished with the sentence, and she said to me, including your wife and your children, I get it. You come in the doors and you need something from me, you need this from the boys, and the dog needs you to pick up after her, and this in the yard, everything. She says, I get it. She says, we got to figure this out. And so what happens is that what we tend to do is we tend to retract, and we go into seclusion, and we become distant. Many of us have suffered from becoming emotionally detached from the people that we lead and mentor. And I'm just looking at Danny and hearing what he's sharing today. And if Danny and his he represents a certain generation. How many of you connect with the generation that Danny represents? There's a few of you in the room today, right? The minute you sense that I or any other person that you look up to or connect with, the moment you sense that I detach from you emotionally, where are you going? You're going somewhere else.
Not with you.
Not with me. So somehow, some way in all of this, in my own being discipled as a disciple of Jesus and my discipling of others and leading them, I have to figure out a way to maintain the attachments, even though sometimes I want to, and my instinct will be to detach. Because we can't disciple in seclusion or emotional detachment. And this is really one of my significant growth areas. I do have, there are people, just because of our structure in our context, I do have mantras for the people that give me their trust and allow me to lead them. And my mantras go something like this: I may not always be available to you, but I'm always accessible. Technology has made it such that anybody can find me at any time if I've got my phone on or near me, right? And so yesterday we were in the middle of our session, and I got a communication that said one of our staff members was in the hospital. So you know what? It didn't matter what was happening in this room. Where did I go? I stepped out. I want to make sure that we have this staff member cared for. And then I came in and I told Danny, so he knows he can be praying for her. By the way, she had to go in the hospital last night. We found out this morning she's being released. Everything is going well. But that's kind of one of those things. I'm not always available. I'm not available to her because I'm here in Omaha with you, but I'm accessible. And then the people around me know that if my door is open, you can come in. You don't have to knock. You come in. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to say things like, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but the door is open. That's a given. You can come interrupt me. If my door is closed, the rule of thumb is simply think twice about knocking. Simply think twice. Doesn't mean you can't knock, but simply think twice. So those are a few things that I lead, and then I've got my rank in priority order, and I know exactly who they are. Wife and kids, I'm at their beck and call. The next level down would be my staff. They could interrupt me, and I will step out of just about anything that I'm doing. And then my third level down from there, simply because of the size of our ministry, would be my key leaders within my key volunteer leaders. And so they and all of these levels of leaders know that those are my priorities. Danny, how about you? What are some good or bad examples you've seen in your life about this thought about being reachable?
Yeah, I think Sean is a good example of what it looks like to be reachable always. I appreciate the way he does ministry, that he says, hey, I might not be in the office, but I will be with people, and I will be doing what I need to do. Yep, thanks. And I trust him. It comes down to trust, and I'm thankful that he said out clearly, hey, this is how I do life, and you're welcome to come into it. And he is very accessible. If I call him, he usually answers or will get back to me quickly. You've got it figured out, and your door is open more than it's closed. It's rare that the door is closed. So if you have an opportunity to be reachable, you will be.
Yeah, but we also have to create boundaries too. I mean, boundaries are good things and healthy things. And let's face it, you all know as church leaders, right? There's only one person who controls your calendar. We usually think that the mentality is everybody controls my calendar because I got to be all things to all people. That's not the truth. We can control our own calendars. And so I know that if I'm at my office, I'm not going to get a lot of creative things done that might need my attention. And so we do have to draw boundaries into where we can. And so sometimes I have to make myself unavailable, although still accessible. It's just part of it. And I think you see that. We need to move on. I know we're approaching our time here.
Yeah.
You all started 15 minutes late, so just so you know, that's we do have one more. I want you to think about a couple of questions, though. I think these questions are relevant to this. I want you to exercise compassion with people that you know around you. My definition of compassion, by the way, it might not be what you would think of it, but my definition of compassion is the ability to put myself in somebody else's shoes and look back at myself without agreeing with them. Even if I disagree with where they're coming from, it helps me be a more compassionate person. So that's where this question comes from. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. How might they perceive your level of accessibility and approachability? Do they see you as welcoming, warm, I can come to you at any time, at any place, or might they proceed toward you with caution? And you can use that as some self-examination. What are your preferred times of the day to be with people? How many of you have times of the day that you're just really good at everything? Or just about everything, right?
Yeah.
Mine is 6:30 a.m. till about 11. You'll get my best hours of the day at that time. The time you don't want to be near me is between 3 and 5 in the afternoon. My door's closed, that's what it's going to be. But I've learned that over the years. Learn that about yourself. And if you know what times of the day you're best with people, be with people in those times of the day. And you're going to have more fruit in what you do with them. And give yourself permission, if you're bad with people at 4 in the afternoon like I am, don't meet with people. I told you this wasn't rocket science, right? But this is, more than anything, we want to give you permission to do some of these things. Our last one, we're going to close with this, is this. Be responsive. By the way, whenever a pastor, because you all are pastors primarily, when you say our last one, we'll close with this, simply means that I know that we're almost done, because you all know that we should have been done already. So hang with me. This is a very important one. We want to be responsive. I think all of us have examples in this room of working alongside or being with leaders who take way too much time making decisions. Anyone? How frustrating is it when you have to serve under somebody's leadership and you're waiting for them to make decisions? It's a very difficult thing to do. I have worked with passive leaders before. I've worked with passive avoidance leaders before. I have worked with passive aggressive leaders before, and I have worked with passive aggressive avoidance leaders before. I have worked with gutless leaders before. One of the melees, in my opinion, to building disciple-making cultures in our congregation is passive leadership or gutless leadership. It is hard sometimes as pastors. Primarily, we are people pleasers at heart, and we really have a hard time making decisions that we know that ultimately are going to affect people. We need to make decisions relative to our organization, relative to our structure. For me, I have been shelving lots of different things related to some structural changes that we need to make, and it literally has become the long, slow death of what I really need to be doing, is empowering Danny and moving him more away from just primarily youth leadership, because what he's doing, discipling our youth, needs to be done for our whole congregation. So he and I have been talking for the last number of months about releasing him more into overall pastoral ministry, not just pastoral ministry with our youth. Hopefully you've been able to see a little glimpse of his heart. He's just really gifted at this. But I have been avoiding so many other things, been passive about so many other decisions that I've needed to make. It's been robbing us and robbing Danny of being able to move forward in that direction. We need to be responsive in our decision making. It's so hard to work for an indecisive leader. Danny, share a little bit about your experience and frustrations with indecisive leaders you worked with before.
Yeah, one decisive leader I've worked with is named Sean Kelly.
Did you say decisive or indecisive?
Indecisive. Yeah, that's why you get money.
Yeah, I'm taking it back. I'm taking 2.
Yeah. And that's just because I'm frustrated by the speed of change, of how fast things have happened. Sean's been our senior pastor for now 4 years, and I was ready for things to happen a lot more quickly once he became our senior pastor. But I've learned that the church is not the NFL. When a new leader or head coach comes in, you don't just clean house. That's not the best way of doing it. A good example of this is in the 4 years that Sean has been our senior pastor, my football team, the 49ers, have had 4 different head coaches. And we are the second worst in the NFL right now. So I'm thankful that he doesn't treat our church like it. But it's hard, and it takes, at the core of it, trust. And that is, I trust Sean and his leadership. I trust that he knows where we are going. I trust his timing, even though that's really hard sometimes. But thankfully, we have a relationship, and he is approachable so that we can talk about these things and discuss them.
Several months ago, maybe before Christmas even, Danny asked to have lunch with me. And as a senior pastor with a staff, anytime someone says, hey, can I have some time with you? Can we go to lunch? First of all, it means that I'm buying. He knows that. Second of all, it means that I want to get off campus and talk about something. Third, it's very serious. So when Danny I was fully prepared to have to release Danny to some greater kingdom work. He was probably going to be going somewhere else. This is kind of where my mind was.
He said, are you breaking up with me?
That's the first thing I sat down. And I'm a bottom line guy. Let's start with the bottom line. Danny, are you breaking up with me? He said no, but he shared some pretty straightforward dissatisfactions that he had with. We just got a snapshot of that right now, and I think he was a little bit afraid to share that with me because what might the ramifications be, but I think part of the responsiveness was the ability to say what I could say because there are things relative to decision making that because there are other staff members other than Danny. So some things I can't share because there are privacy issues, right? And so walking that line of keeping him encouraged while at the same time helping him understand that while it looks like we're changing things slowly, to remind him that in the 4.5 years, we have people that have left our fellowship because guess what happened, in their opinion? Change was happening way too fast. It's like, you never win. You know the difference between being an associate pastor and a senior pastor is, don't you? No? When you're an associate pastor, the target is on the front. When you're a senior pastor, the target's on the back. I mean, never see any of this coming in a million years. So we need to be responsive in our decision making. But we need to be responsive relative to people. We all have people in our congregations who are toxic. We're the only ones? Do anybody have toxic people in their conversations? All right, is that toxic person sitting next to you? Please raise your hands. No, I'm just kidding. We have toxic people. Yes, there. We have toxic people, and Mike's talk yesterday. This theme of Mike, and I've heard him talk about it before, but it's so important. What's in the air matters. When you walk into a room, you know if you're walking into a friendly environment or a hostile environment almost instantly. You can detect these things, and when we are not responsive in dealing with toxic people, whether they're on our staffs or whether they are people within our congregation who are our volunteers, there's nothing that's going to suck the life and energy, especially of a disciple-making culture, out of us more quickly than toxic people